It would be fair to say that Doctor Who themed board games over the years have been a little underwhelming. Most of them sit in a sort of no man's land as part game, part merchandise. Surely, given the 60 years of history, all the characters, the regenerations, the villains, the multiple universes, you'd have thought creating a Doctor Who board game even partially worthy of a Time Lord would have happened by now. Well, it kinda has. Back in 2017, Gale Force 9 published Doctor Who Time of the Daleks, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying right at the start of this video, I really like it. It's not without a few issues, but we'll get to those later. It is, at its heart, a race to the home planet of the Time Lords between various regenerations of the Doctor and the Daleks, who seek revenge on the Doctors by wiping them from history. Playing one of the 4 regenerations included in the box, the objective is to beat the Daleks to Gallifrey and get there before any of the other Doctors. Now, this last bit might seem not very Doctor Who, as whoever gets there first in the traditional sense does indeed win. But as during the game you can request help from other Doctors, hence the game being described as semi-cooperative, one way to think of it is, if one of the Doctors wins, they in effect all do, as they all survive the Daleks' attempt to eradicate them from history. Each Doctor has a TARDIS and control panel. Here you place any companions you recruit, add equipment to the TARDIS, and keep stock of your sonic charges. You start with 1 companion, but can recruit more by spending sonic charges or these timey-wimey cards. The timey-wimey cards are a deck of equipment, events and abilities, although the game calls the latter transfers because you give them to another Doctor after you play them. The game is centred around the Earth and Web of Time board. Earth is represented by 3 time zones, Earth past, present and future. Each has a small cutout where you place the unrevealed dilemma tiles, which are turned over if a Doctor decides to travel there to complete an adventure. Completing them successfully usually moves you along this time web and gives you extra stuff. Failing usually does the opposite and moves the Daleks closer to Gallifrey, and you often lose stuff. Oh, and a Dalek arrives, making it more difficult if and when you decide to try again. To make things a little trickier, the time web has a number of time anomalies on it, which are activated when the Dalek ship lands on them. Then really bad stuff happens. This is why it's important to slow them down, as it is to simply be quicker to the finish. But the Doctors don't have to travel to Earth to complete adventures if they don't want to. They can roll this dice instead. A TARDIS means you pick 2 locations and choose one, roll the question and just turn over the top one. Each location gets 2 face-down dilemmas. You then choose which one you'd like to tackle. As with those found on Earth, succeed, get the buff, fail, and get the nerf. So how do you complete the adventures? That's where the story dice come in. Now, some of you are probably already thinking, oh good lord, please not dice, and definitely not that many. Each location and its respective dilemma have a combination of symbols that you need to match. Although it might look like it, you do not need to match the colours. Whilst the black dice include all the 6 symbols you need, the 3 different colours act as a guide telling you what coloured dice is more likely to have that symbol. The Doctor, their companions and timey-wimey cards allow you to generate a pool of up to 8 dice, which after you roll can be manipulated further by the companions, timey-wimey cards and spending sonic charges. You can also discard a black dice to re-roll all the remaining ones. Some of the dilemmas make this more difficult by preventing one element of the post-dice roll manipulation. Fixed points means you can't re-roll dice, time locks don't allow you to change the face of a dice, and a time breach reduces the dice pool to 7. If you succeed, you follow the instructions on that location's time zone, and then you discard the dilemma. Any extra companions you recruited this round become permanent, and should there be a Dalek present from a previously failed attempt at this location, the part mutant, part mechanical xenophobe is sent packing. If no matter how much you try and adjust the dice you end up failing the adventure, you follow the fail criteria on the dilemma and add a Dalek to that location. If it's on Earth, it's the specific time zone. And dismiss any companions not working for the Doctor full time. If you place the last Dalek marker, which is Guess Who, fail another adventure and need to place another Dalek, they have succeeded in conquering the universe and they win. Which is another reason to slow them down rather than just sprinting to Gallifrey. Oh, and the other way they win is if there are 3 Daleks on Earth. The aforementioned time anomalies act as a sort of narrative roadblock and either make things more difficult until dealt with, funnel you into a challenge, or cause a major event. 2 other things help nail the theme. One might not always be welcome. The first is the ability to ask other Doctors for help. The helping Doctor can aid from afar. This is a low-cost, low-reward, failure doesn't hurt the helper too much strategy. Or they can join the Doctor asking for help at that Doctor's location with a higher cost, higher reward, but bigger nerf if you fail. The second is that some time anomalies and dilemmas force the Doctor to regenerate into the next chronologically available one, while still keeping all of the companions and timey-wimey cards. This can make for some interesting combinations if forced to do this multiple times. Amy Pond, for example, can end up helping the first Doctor, while Susan could be working with 12. This is where the expansions make sense beyond just adding more players, as they add more possible Doctors into the regeneration mix at low player counts. It can also be quite sad if you've become quite attached to a particular Time Lord. In the first edition there's a little extra. This fella. He's not in the main rules, but comes with his own rules card. In short, he allows you to re-roll 1 dice. K9 is in effect a transfer, as once used, you pass him to another Doctor. And speaking of the rulebook, it's pretty good. Clearly written with lots of gameplay examples and accompanying pictures, a glossary, and on the back a reference that walks you through 1 turn. The booklet could have been larger to give the content some room to breathe, but that's just me nitpicking. As I said, I like the game. It's straightforward enough to quickly get new players up and running, and Who fans will feel immediately comfortable. It wears the theme particularly well. And I'm going to say this, yes, that includes the dice. I know some people get very sniffy about dice rolling, and there's a lot of dice rolling. However, especially with New Who, the pacey, often chaotic action where everything is resolved in the dying minutes of an episode fits the story dice mechanic really well. If there are some criticisms, they start with the components. This is the first edition with the 12th Doctor front and centre. The console and timey-wimey cards could have been better quality. Why the console isn't cardstock like the locations and dilemmas is a mystery even the good Doctor would struggle with, although this is addressed in the expansions and the second edition. Licensing obligations are another problem. Bear with me here. The second edition has Doctor number 13 replacing 12. However, if you have the second edition and want 12, none of the currently available expansions include him. The Doctor's number 10 and number 5 expansion seems to be out of print. If you find one, please let me know. And if you want Doctor 3 and 8 but already have the second edition, you'll end up with 13 twice. Also, if you're a completist, there's no War Doctor. My suspicion is that Gale Force 9 have no plans to reprint or update any of the Time of the Daleks content. The cost of retrofitting the game every time the BBC hire a new actor must make it cost prohibitive to keep the game current, especially as the majority of those interested in the game probably already have a copy. I also don't think the game scales very well either. Game length and downtime follow a largely linear progression, with more players making for a proportionally longer game, and whilst your mileage may vary, I'd use the expansions to add more content rather than more players. With all of that said, if you're wondering what's the best Doctor Who board game you can find, you need to look no further. Is it the definitive greatest of all time, no pun intended, board game based on the BBC's long-running IP? No, it isn't, but I suspect it's as good as we're going to get. And as the saying goes, never let perfection be the enemy of good.